All right, let's talk about chronic cough in adults. This is a topic you are absolutely going to see on your PBC exam, and having a systematic approach is really the key to getting these questions right. In this explainer, we're going to give you that exact system for diagnosis and management so you can walk into your exam feeling totally prepared.
Okay, first things first, what even is a chronic cough? For your exam, there's a magic number you've got to remember. 8 weeks. Any cough that hangs around for more than 8 weeks is officially chronic. That time frame, that's the critical first step in your entire diagnostic thought process. And, this isn't some rare thing we're talking about. It's a pretty big deal, affecting up to 20% of adults. That's huge. It means you're going to see this a lot in practice, and for sure on your exam. So having a rock-solid understanding of it is essential. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics, then we'll build up that diagnostic protocol step by step. We'll cover all the usual suspects and how to treat them. Then we'll move into the trickier cases, like refractory cough. We'll finish up with special populations and some rapid-fire tips to really lock it all in for exam day. Okay, section 1. Let's just lay the groundwork here. Make sure we're all on the same page about what we're trying to do and why. So it's really important to know the different timelines for cough. You've got your acute cough, right? That's anything less than 3 weeks. Think of a common cold. Then there's subacute, which hangs around for 3 to 8 weeks. That's that annoying cough that lingers after you've been sick. But what we're zeroing in on today is everything that sticks around past that 8-week mark.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. Our primary goal is not just to stop the cough. That is a huge mistake. The real goal is to find the why. Just reaching for a simple cough suppressant could be masking something much more serious. We're trying to prevent some pretty nasty complications. I mean, people can literally fracture their ribs from coughing. And of course, we need to make sure we haven't missed something really scary, like lung cancer.
So how do we figure this all out systematically? Well, the answer, and really the core of this whole explainer, is something called the Anatomic Diagnostic Protocol, or ADP. Okay, take a good look at this flowchart. Seriously, this is your roadmap. It's the whole diagnostic journey right here. Notice how it starts at the top with the basics, a good assessment, a chest x-ray. Then it immediately checks for the easy stuff. Is the patient a smoker? Are they on an ACE inhibitor? If you can solve it right there, fantastic. If not, and that x-ray is clear, the protocol guides you down a very specific path, investigating and treating the most common causes one by one. This systematic approach is way better than just throwing a bunch of drugs at the problem because it helps you pinpoint the true cause. We're going to break this down, but just getting that big picture, top-down flow is the key. All right, let's zoom in on those first few steps. You always start with the fundamentals: a solid history, a physical exam, and a chest x-ray. At the same time, you're looking at their medication list for an ACE inhibitor. If the chest x-ray is clear, they don't smoke, and they're not on an ACE inhibitor, then you start hunting for the usual suspects: upper airway cuff syndrome, GERD, and asthma or NAB.
But before you go down that common path, you have to stop and screen for red flags. These are non-negotiable. If you see any of these, like coughing up blood, a long smoking history with a new or different cough, or systemic symptoms like fever and weight loss, all bets are off. That should stop you in your tracks and make you think about a specialist referral right away.
Now that we have our initial steps down pat, let's follow that ADP and talk about how to treat the most common causes, one at a time. Okay, first up on our list, upper airway cough syndrome, or UACS. You probably remember this by its old name, postnasal drip syndrome. This one is incredibly common. It's basically when drainage from the nose or sinuses irritates cough receptors in the upper airway. Clinically, you're looking for clues like the feeling of drainage in the back of the throat, frequent throat clearing, or maybe seeing a cobblestone pattern back there. For UACS, especially when you're not 100% sure but have a strong hunch, you can try what's called empiric therapy. The recommendation is a first-generation antihistamine plus a decongestant. Now, here's a key pearl for your exam. These older first-gen agents often work better than the newer ones for UACS. Why is that? Well, it's because of their strong anticholinergic properties, which are great at drying up those secretions. Of course, that also means you have to counsel on the side effects, sedation and dry mouth. This is a perfect example of how this stuff gets tested. The question forces you to connect the drug class to its main side effect. The answer, of course, would be something like diphenhydramine, and your counseling has to hit hard on that risk of drowsiness and to be careful with driving or operating machinery. Okay, next up on our protocol, we're looking at inflammatory airway conditions. This includes cough variant asthma, where a cough is literally the only symptom, and NOB. The main difference is that with NOB, you have the same inflammatory cells you see in asthma, but the airways themselves aren't all twitchy and hyperresponsive. To really nail down these diagnoses, we need objective tests like spirometry or a methacholine challenge. And here's the therapeutic takeaway, the bottom line. The key for both of these conditions is that they respond really, really well to inhaled corticosteroids. A trial of an ICS can actually be both diagnostic and therapeutic. If the cough gets a whole lot better with an ICS, you've probably found your culprit. Now, for GERD, a very common and honestly a pretty tricky cause. The cough can be triggered by either direct aspiration of stomach contents or through a nerve reflex. But here's the kicker, the thing that makes it so challenging. Up to half of patients with a GERD-induced cough have zero heartburn. None. It's a silent cause that you have to actively hunt for. Management starts with lifestyle stuff. Then we move to a trial of acid suppression. And listen up, because this is a massive exam pitfall, the duration of the trial. For a cough, a trial of a PPI or an H2RA has to last for at least 2 to 3 months. A shorter trial just isn't enough time for all that inflammation to heal, so you might wrongly assume the therapy failed. You gotta give it time. And we can't forget about drug-induced causes. You always have to consider an ACE inhibitor. It's thought to be caused by the buildup of bradykinin, which makes the airway nerve super sensitive. It's a class effect and shows up as that classic dry, tickling, non-productive cough. And the management for this, it's beautifully straightforward. The diagnosis is made by stopping the drug. You discontinue the ACE inhibitor, and you'd expect the cough to get better within about 1 to 4 weeks. The right move is to then substitute it with an angiotensin II receptor blocker, an ARB, which doesn't cause that same bradykinin buildup. So what happens when you've gone through the whole protocol? You've treated for UASS, asthma, and GERD, you've ruled out an ACE inhibitor, but the patient is still coughing. Well, now we're getting into the challenging category of unexplained chronic cough, or UCC. UCC is a diagnosis of exclusion. It's what's left after you've ruled everything else out. And nowadays, we're often calling it cough hypersensitivity syndrome. The best way to think of it is like a car alarm that's way too sensitive. You know, a leaf falls on it and it just starts blaring. That's what's happening with the cough reflex nerves. Minor things like a change in air temperature or even just talking can set them off. This new way of thinking has led us to use neuromodulators, basically drugs that can turn down the volume on these hypersensitive nerves. Gabapentin is recommended in the guidelines as an option. For your exam, you absolutely need to know the dosing. You start low at 300 milligrams daily and titrate up slowly, aiming for a max of 900 milligrams twice a day. Also, remember that 6-month reevaluation point to see if it's still doing the job. This question is a perfect test of those key clinical details. You have to remember the numbers. So what are they? Maximum recommended dose is 900 milligrams twice daily. And when do you reevaluate? At the 6-month mark. Lock those numbers in. All right, let's switch gears and talk about some really high-yield exam topics. Managing chronic cough in special populations. How does our approach change for patients who are pregnant or breastfeeding? In pregnancy, GERD is incredibly common and can be a huge driver of cough. The good news is that H2RAs and PPIs are generally considered safe to use. If it's an asthma-related cough, inhaled corticosteroids are the go-to, and budesonide has the most safety data. Now, a critical point for your exam, oral decongestants like pseudoephedrine should be avoided in the first trimester. For breastfeeding, the approach is much less affected. It's pretty similar to non-breastfeeding patients. Finally, let's lock in some crucial therapeutic tips. Think of these as rapid-fire facts that are perfect for that last-minute revision before you walk into your exam. This is so important. A patient can have both GERD and UCAS at the same time. So if your treatment for one cause leads to a partial improvement but not a full resolution, don't stop that treatment. That's a classic mistake. Keep it going while you investigate and treat the next likely cause. This is a critical negative point to remember. You might see mucolytics like acetylcysteine as an option on your exam, but they have no proven role in managing a general chronic cough. For your exam, it's an incorrect answer. This highlights a key little difference. If the cause is clearly allergic rhinitis with all the classic symptoms, a second-gen antihistamine like loratadine is a great choice. But for that broader, less defined category of UACS, the potent drying effect of the first-generation agents makes them the preferred choice to start with. And that wraps up our deep dive. The key to success with chronic cough, both in the clinic and on your exam, is that systematic, protocol-driven approach. As you keep studying, think about how this new idea of cough hypersensitivity might change things in the future. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your preparation.